Good morning, everyone. This is the New Hampshire House Committee on Election. We have today's scheduled public hearings followed by executive session. There will be a short break between public hearings and the executive session. And of course, exactly when that starts and ends depends on what time it is. We are going to start with the hearing on House Bill 1149, but before we do that, I ask that you rise and join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. First matter on our agenda this morning is HB 1149. This is relative to the number of names required for nomination by nomination papers. And with us to introduce the bill to the committee is the sponsor, Representative Craig. Representative Craig, welcome to Election Law.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. For those of you who I have not had the fortune to meet yet, my name is Kevin Craig. I represent Coos County District 4, which is the towns of Lancaster and Dalton and the unincorporated place of Kilkenny. So, if you will give me one moment, my prepared remarks are safely in my notebook right next to the door where I won't forget them, but I do have a copy saved here. So, running for office in New Hampshire is famously easy. We have a volunteer legislature, essentially volunteer, as you all know, and thank you all for giving your time and service to the people of our state. Nominations and elections are governed by RSA Chapter 655, which I'm sure the members of this committee know better than I do, since you deal with it exclusively. Each of us here today, as members of the two currently recognized parties, fill out a simple form and pay $2. That's town hall or city hall. It's a trivial process for anyone who is registered as a member of one of the two major parties before the filing deadline closes. And for those who aren't members of one of the two currently recognized parties, it is more complicated. They must file nomination papers, which means a petition drive. Currently, RSA 655:42 requires that 150 qualified voters sign a nomination paper nominating a candidate for state representative or a county office, executing papers from throughout the state. Each of those must be on a separate sheet of paper and must be verifiable and verified in order to be counted. To attain party ballot access and avoid the nomination paper process, RSA 655:42, Roman numeral 3, requires 3% of voters in the most recent statewide election, meaning the total votes cast for president, U.S. senator, or governor. This limits access to the minority of potential candidates who are registered members of a major party. It's a disadvantage to those in rural areas that are less densely populated. And I will note that with the coming redistricting, Coos County loses a representative. We are the geographical county and the least populous. One of the proposed districts will be almost half of the geographical area of Coos County, putting it almost on a par with a couple of our smaller counties, yet we'll have only one representative. Our New Hampshire Constitution in Part the First, Article 11 states, every inhabitant of the state having the proper qualifications has equal right to be elected into office. Part 2, Article 3 states that we, the legislature, have an obligation to prevent monopolies by any persons or associations. Limiting ballot access is a violation of our fundamental sense of fairness, our state motto of seeking fair access and competition, fair competition in all things, and avoiding monopoly. And let me say, just for the record, I'm not presenting this on behalf of any party. I have no plans to run for any party except the one of which I'm currently a member. I have not coordinated with any other party officials on fully, and with that, That, I ask that you give it favorable consideration, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Representative Craig. Questions?
I have a question.
Oh, thank you, Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Thank you for taking my question. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to reduce it by two-thirds exactly in all of the races? So just
I did cut it to 1/3 of the current numbers because that is a level that they have been at previously. Every time that we've had an election that results in a third party gaining status, the numbers get changed. And that has gone off and on throughout the years. The numbers have been higher, they've been lower. But I think this is an readily attainable goal for any candidate who is not a member of the major two parties, and it gives much better access and is more fair.
Further questions from committee? Follow up to that, Representative Craig. Could you tell me when this number changed to the current number and what the number was before it became what's currently in statute?
I do not have that with me. As I said, I left my notes. The list of changes is in the RSAs, is listed online. The dates that it's changed.
Right, the dates which are sort of difficult to follow.
Right,
So you
right.
don't know whether your decision to go to 1/3 has any actual relation to any prior amount in this statute.
I have seen the numbers referenced before.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions from the committee? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Representative Craig. Also signed up to speak to this bill is Representative Tony LaBranch. Welcome back, Representative LaBranch.
Good to be back. Hello, members of the Election Law Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Tony LaBranch, and I represent the town of Amherst. I come before you today in support of House Bill 1149, which lowers ballot access requirements for independent and third-party candidates. This bill simply gives Granite Staters more choice when it comes to voting. This makes sense in New Hampshire, as nearly 1/3 of our voters identify as independents. What I often hear from constituents is that people are tired of the two-party system, and they want more options. People are tired of voting for the lesser of two evils, bad or worse. This, along with other electoral reforms such as ranked choice voting, would increase participation in our democracy and increase representation. And with that, I ask that the committee pass this bill with an ought-to-pass recommendation.
Any questions? Representative, you mentioned that you thought that this would increase participation. Do you have anything from any other states or this state? What Representative Craig seemed to indicate that these numbers have changed before, that led to an increase in participation.
Thank you for the question. I would say a lot of the evidence is mostly members of third parties in this state who, when it comes to election season, they're not able to vote for a candidate that they do support. Oftentimes, they do not agree with both parties, so they just do not go out and vote because they are not represented on the ballot and they do not have an opportunity to speak on the ballot, as write-in candidates statistically have a very low chance of winning.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'm seeing none. Thank you for coming. Also signed up to speak on 1149 is Katie Gargano from the Secretary of State's office. Welcome. Is the red light on? There you go. Thank you.
There we go. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Election Law Committee. My name is Katie Gargano, and I'm representing the Secretary of State's office on House Bill 1149. The Secretary of State's office opposes this bill. The bill is lowering the requirements for nomination by nomination papers by 2/3 to get your name on the general election ballot. The imposed numbers are not fair to the primary candidates. who have gone through the full primary process to get the full support of the voters to be on the ballot. We foresee lowering these numbers. The requirements would add clutter to the general ballot, and the existing requirements in the law for nominations by nominating papers is a reasonable amount and has been in place for a number of years, dating back to 1979 when the codification occurred. I did some research in those big law books we have.
Thank you. Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, ma'am, for taking the question. So when it was the number required was last changed, do you know what the numbers were back then prior to the current number for each office?
We did not find a date when the numbers were ever changed. The books go back to 1979 when the codification occurred, and those numbers were already set in place at that time.
Quick follow-up.
Follow-up.
So as far as you can tell, then the numbers have not changed from 1979 to present.
Correct.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Follow up to that, if you know, there was a reference made in earlier testimony that this number changes depending on whether a third party is successful on getting on the ballot. I thought I had heard that as being a trigger mechanism for this number. Are you aware of that? And if so, what is that? Because there was recently a third party candidate on the ballot.
Right. I think that person was thinking of the requirement in a general election ballot. If they get a certain number of votes, then the party gets to stay on the ballot. And it's currently 4%. I believe it's 4% currently. And I believe there's another bill later on today that's asking to lower that.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Further questions from committee members? I'm not seeing any, and that is the last speaker I have signed up. If Representative Terosian could go get the blue sheet, that would be terrific. There was remote testimony on this. Just as a reminder, if you're watching or even here in the room, you can get on the general court website and go to particular bills and submit testimony online by submitting a PDF or some other attachment, which will then go into the official docket for this file. You can also just sign up whether you're in favor or opposed. And as to remote testimony in favor or opposed, as of when the sign up stopped, which is early in the morning on the day of the hearing, there were 9 people in support of this bill and 1 opposed. You also have the opportunity to sign up in person here at the LOB when these hearings occurred, and we've had 2 persons sign up today in favor of the bill, and no one else has signed up. Seeing no further questions or anyone requesting to speak on 1149, I'm going to close the hearing on 1149, and we will open the hearing on the next bill scheduled for 9:45, which is HB 1166. HB 1166 requires certain voters to declare a party affiliation prior to a state primary election, and requires candidates to be members of political parties for a certain amount of time prior to election, in which such candidates seek election. And we have with us today to introduce the bill, I believe, Representative Love, who is the prime sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the Election Law Committee. For the record, my name's Representative David Love. I represent Rockingham County 6, which is Derry. And this bill the idea came as a result of a real contentious special election that we had just recently in Derry for a state rep candidate, state rep seat. And you know, the deception that was used in that election, I don't think it's what our founders intended when we put together our election laws. Currently in statute, the parties are allowed to dictate if they want to close the election, but there's nothing in statute as far as when somebody has to declare, and this bill will do that. I do have an amendment that just came through. It will strike the requirement to be a party member for 6 months before you run for office, and it will also add it's just for federal and it's not for federal. It's for state and city elections. Like I said, you know, the deception that's being practiced, you know, there's dozens of social media posts, you know, let's all go undeclared and then grab Republican ballots and mess with their election, or mess with their primaries. You know, like I said, I don't think, you know, it's what our founders want. We want clean, fair, and you know, and you know, no deception in our elections. It'd be the best, you know, the best way of doing it, and I'd like to see that. And that's the purpose of this.
What have you got? Let me see. Thank you, Representative Love. And I have just been handed an amendment to HB 1166. Does everybody over there have it? You all have it? Okay, did you here? Does Ross have one?
It might have been done in two different amendments. There was quite a bit of paper. I
Okay.
just got it.
Just
seconds
as a
ago.
rule, committee members, you will not go passing out paperwork until it comes through this chair first, because we end up with too many papers flying around, and I've just heard from the speaker that there might be another amendment. So I have one amendment in my hand, 0477. Right, I know. So it is 2 pages, so I'm going to pass it out and ask that somehow it get to Representative Ward over there in the other land. And if there are any extras, then it can go on the table. Representative Love, do you have a copy of Amendment
You know what? I don't.
1166?
It all came down so fast that
All right, so why don't we all take a moment to look at the amendment? Let everybody get it. All right, so just as everybody looks at it, this amendment changes what is now paragraph 3 on page 1 of the original bill. If you go to line 27 on the original bill, this amendment adds an additional sentence that says the requirements of this paragraph shall not apply to federal elections. Which my recollection is Representative Love presented when he spoke to what he intended the amendment to do. With the amendment in hand, does anybody have any questions to Representative Love?
Madam Chairman.
Representative McDonald.
Good morning, Representative Love.
morning.
I'm familiar with what you're referring to in the recent special election in Derry. As you know, I was involved with that with you and Representative Nelson, and was delighted with the outcome all the way through, and recognize the problem you're referring to. Neither the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party currently has a majority of voters in New Hampshire, much as either both of us would like to have a majority of voters, we don't. Undeclared voters are the largest voting bloc in the state of New Hampshire, and they take both Republican and Democratic ballots and primaries. There's been a traditional concern as to how undeclared voters would react if they were restricted in terms of being able to do that. Is that something you've taken into consideration at all?
Yes, I have. I've talked to Chairman Stepanek about it, and you know, and people involved with the 603 Alliance and what have you. And you know, it's a problem that's going to get worse. You know, it's like I said, there was, you know, a dozen, maybe 20 different posts on Facebook about let's do this and mess with it. you know, it just lends to, you know, deception in elections, and I don't think it's anything that any of us want. And, you know, once people understand that they have to 120 days out, and that's a negotiable thing. I just don't want to change, you know, 3 seconds before they grab a ballot. You know, I think we've got to guard against, you know, deception and lies.
Follow up, Madam Chairman?
Follow up.
Representative Love, you said that there was talk about messing with elections on
Mm-hmm.
social media. Did they indicate that they were just going to mess with Republican elections or both parties?
There were known progressives in Derry. They belong to the Derry Progressive page.
Okay, we're going to stop this.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
If there is something specific that you want the committee to consider in regards to social media postings, then I want you to produce it. And if we're saying it's a problem for both parties, I want examples of both parties. I appreciate that there was concern in a specific election. And I can tell you, I come from a Republican household in Massachusetts with a father who was chair of the committee and went to a few inaugural balls, just as a side, and stopped working for the party when they opened up primaries to undeclared, or I think in Massachusetts they might have called them independent voters, because he said, and this was decades ago, because of concerns that you had. So this is not a practice that just this state has in regards to undeclared or independent voters being able to pull a primary ticket of any party on the ballot, 1, 2, 3, however many there are. Are you aware of any other states that have undeclared ballots that allow the choice of a primary ballot that have undeclared voters that require registration in a party to pull that party's primary ballot?
There are 13 states, I know that.
13? Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Is that a
I have a question.
representative? Go ahead. Sorry, I'm not seeing very well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam
Sorry.
Chair. And yeah, it was the norm prior to the mid-70s or even 1980s to have what we call closed party primaries. I'm curious about the amendment that sets aside federal offices. Is that because the national parties regulate the primaries for federal office, or is it because federal election law regulates that? Why is that exception for federal office?
I believe the
inserted?
federal, you know, the national parties do have control over it, and I was told that it just might put the First in the Nation primary in jeopardy. So, you know, I certainly took that out.
Further questions? Representative Barry.
A question, comment, just to clarify, we don't allow unaffiliated voters to vote in primaries. We actually do not allow that. When you go to pull, if you are an unaffiliated voter and you go to pull a party ballot, you register as that party, you pull that ballot, and then, as we've discussed in this committee before, you have the opportunity to switch back to unaffiliated. So this is more actually directed at Representative Muirhead, because I do love our philosophical conversations. We do have closed primaries in New Hampshire. They operate as if they are semi-closed, but they are actually closed.
May I comment on it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, you know, that is the premise, but when you can change your party affiliation literally 3 seconds before you take a ballot, it's not really closed. It's not
All right,
anywhere
but
near it.
Representative Barry was actually referring to the declaration that is made when you do such a change that is codified in law.
Listen,
Okay,
I just want to change the law to, you know, put a period of time between it.
thank you. Is there anybody else with a question for Representative Ward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question. You spoke about the founding fathers and the primary. Do you know how candidates were nominated in the 18th century?
You know, I don't. Educate me.
It was by the caucus system. Primaries came in the late 19th century and early 20th. So I don't think we have a founding fathers issue here. Thank you.
I was going to try and divert and ask whether they used ranked choice voting, but I won't. Any further questions for Representative Love? All right. Thank you very much, Representative Love. Also signed up to speak on House Bill 1166 is Daniel Healy. Welcome back to the Election Law Committee. Daniel Healy is from the New Hampshire Town and City Clerks Association.
Good morning, members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Daniel Healy. I'm the Derry Town Clerk, and I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association as we offer our strong opposition to this bill. As a town clerk, I would like to see as many eligible voters come out to the polls and vote as possible. In Derry, we have 19,253 registered voters. Of those, 5,231 are registered as Democrat, which is around 27%. 6,757 are Republicans, which is 35%. And then we have our undeclared voters, which make up over 37% of our voting population. Many of our undeclared voters vote in every election, but would rather not have their friends, neighbors, or family know their affiliation, so they utilize the changeback table and remain undeclared. On Election Day, this bill would cause confusion and anger to voters that are turned away because they didn't make a selection 120 days prior. I question how, if this bill passes, voters will be educated in time to not disenfranchise them. We should be looking at ways to increase voter participation and not ways to suppress it. I would recommend the committee to ITL this bill and leave our primaries the way that they are. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
That is the last person I have signed up to speak on House Bill 1166. If Representative Terosian could get me the blue sheet. There was remote testimony that went on in the form of expressing whether an individual is in favor or opposed to a bill. That sign-up had a total of 80 people signed up, 4 persons in support of the bill, 75 opposed, and 1 person neutral. I have to admit, I didn't know neutral was an option. And in regards to the sign-up sheet here today, as to parties who did not speak, we had a total of 6 individuals signed up, and they were all in favor of the bill. And with that, I'm going to close the hearing on 1166 and open the hearing on 1174. 1174 is relative to election challenges. This bill, the prime sponsor is Representative Yakovovich from Hooksett, and he is with us today. Welcome. And I got you in the right bill today. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, Madam Chair, I'm Representative Michael Yakubovich from Hooksett, representing Merrimack 24, and here I'm presenting 1174, which is a very simple bill. It arose after the discussion with some members of the committee. It's got to do with the purity of elections, and this here clarifies where the poll challengers can be positioned. This bill brings the uniformity to towns. It says that the poll challengers can be permitted to stand within 6 feet of ballot counting areas, the hand-counted ballots, ballots being hand-counted, and within the line of sight of any electronic device, which is the machines. That's all this bill is doing. It's just spelling out the rights of the challengers and specifying the distance they can be positioned at. It's not changing anything else in the assignment of the challengers, the selection of the challengers, compensation of the challengers, anything else, just their location. And this is all this bill is about. Uniformity, clarity, so every town knows what they are there to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the representative? Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for taking the question. Does current law specify a distance presently, or there's nothing stated? Do you know?
Thank you for the question. No, nothing stated. So this will help. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? No, you got it. Okay. Representative Ward. Can you turn your mic on?
I'm sorry. On lines 4 and 5 of your bill, are you trying to set up a distinction between towns that hand count and places that use machines? 'Cause I see 6 feet for hand count, and all you need is a straight view of a ballot machine, which could be 100 yards away.
Thank you for the question. It's not the distinction for towns, because within the same town, hand counting can be done on ballots that are that don't fit into the machine, that don't look right, that there'll be a mistake in the machine. So in the same town, both can be done. So it's not a distinction for towns. It's just where the challengers need to be. So with the machine, I think it's good enough, because you're not going to be reviewing every ballot. But hand counting, you want to be closer to see because the humans decide what the ballot says, and the machine is the machine. It just you just want to make sure they go in. Thank you.
So you are setting up a distinction.
Not thank you. Not between towns, but between the ballots, the way the ballots are counted.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Representative Wilhelm.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative, for taking my question. Was there a specific issue or incident that happened that prompted this legislation?
Thank you for the question. I can't recall the specific incident. It arose over several different discussions in the last year. This is
Representative Barry.
I can help with that. Tangentially, Representative Willem, Representative Ugojevich asked me about this bill. It was actually one of the ideas I propositioned to him. And to answer your question, that was not directed to me, but was in effect, and you didn't know it. It actually came out of the Merrimack town election special, that they were counting the ballots, and because of where they set up the rail, it was so far away you couldn't see what they were doing. I don't believe there was anything nefarious. Let me be very clear about that. But if there was something to be going on, there was no way to know which one was going into which pile. So that was when the representative contacted me about asking me which sort of bills I think the committee might actually have some tolerance to passing. I said this might be a reasonable approach to add some transparency to the election without actually interfering with the operations. But to answer your question, it was Merrimack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you for your presentation of the bill. Also signed up for 1174 is Diane Fisher from Hampstead.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I did not intend to speak today. I came to be in support of the bill. However, arriving here, I've been motivated, I guess, as I have so much in the past. I'm from Hampstead, New Hampshire. I've lived in New Hampshire for over 50 years. I've always voted. I've always considered myself civic-minded and tried to become educated about the situations and the votes that I would cast. It is only in the last few years that I have become much more active, whether it be supporting candidates, running rallies, etc. I've always been kind of out there. In the 2020 election, it was the first time, and I'm a little bit sorry to say, that I volunteered as a poll watcher. Why did I do that? There was such an undercurrent of feeling. I didn't quite have my finger on the pulse of it, but I was nervous. I wasn't confident. I felt some angst going on and some things happening in my town of Hampstead that I couldn't believe. And I thought, you know, I don't want to worry about this. I want to make sure, I want to assure that everybody's vote and my vote as well are counted. And how can I sit back and complain about something if I am not there, if I do not, you know, lend a hand, more than handing out signs, standing there with the signs as I usually did and everything else. I also was privileged to be allowed to be in Pembroke. And I went there day after day after day, as many others did, that were allowed to witness the situation there. And very impressed with the people that were doing the hand counting, et cetera, but also aware of the same things that I was witnessing and seeing in different areas, that the visibility is not always there. It wasn't that we were denied it ultimately, you know, to that feeling, but we had to ask. Could you please move? Could we please see? Could we please take a camera shot at this, that, or the other thing? It doesn't seem plausible that you should have to do that. It should be very obvious. As to your question about where did, you know, did something arise that brought forth the need for this, that we have a shorter distance or be able to see. I don't even think it's important that anything had to happen in Merrimack. It's unfortunate if it did. But this is about, and my stand and my feeling about this is to prevent more division, more angst, you know, and the uniformity, I like that word, uniformity across the state so that everybody feels the same way. You don't want to feel that you have to move or say excuse me or try to feel or realize, as I did at times, that I could not see, I didn't have full access. It isn't about the change, it isn't about the party, but I think anyone, and I respect so much you all, you know, that you have done and dedicated your life to being in a situation where you help this state to be what it is. We have elections, whether we are a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, whatever our position, we want to be confident that we have felt and exposed ourselves to the truth, that we align ourselves with a president or a vice president or a secretary of state or whoever it might be that was duly elected, and we are confident in that. Do we not see, and I believe it, granted it's just my opinion, but I think truly in my heart and soul that if you asked every citizen of the United States who maybe voted in the 2020 election or might be in the future, do you trust the elections? Do you trust the process? And whether they be a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, whatever, I really feel at this time in our nation, most everyone would say no. The Democrats think the Republicans are sneaky, the Republicans don't trust this, the independents, who knows what it is. But this is something we can do. It is one small step that we can take. It, to me, is a no-brainer. Who would not want you to be a little bit closer to the action to see? So you can go back to your constituents, your people, or your neighbors and say, yep, it was okay from everything I saw. I have one more thing to say. I am so tired of a word that I am so guilty of using. It brings tears to my eyes that the word that I have used the most, and I'm trying not to do it, but here it is. Unbelievable. My husband passed away, I'm a widow, and I often say, if he came back and I spoke to him and told him what was going on now, in this current world that we sit in, he would say, it can't be. It's unbelievable. I speak to my friends and they say, can you believe what happened? Can you see? Can you whatever? Unbelievable has become the word. And I want believable to become the word. I implore you, I am passionate. I love my country. I have 4 children. I have 8 grandchildren. I have every generation from the Civil War, letters from people in my family. I did not serve, and I'm not proud of that. But I am trying to serve my nation, my country, my state now by speaking to the sanity, to bring it back, the common sense, the belief in our system. And I pray that you will listen to that. And I thank you so much. I didn't mean to go on for such a length of time, but I speak from my heart, didn't have any notes, no phone, no technology, just from my heart. And I thank you.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak on 1174 is Ken Eyring.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I have to tell you, that is a tough act to follow. I agree with everything that she said, and I just want to add a couple things to that. I agree this is not a partisan issue. This is not Republicans or Democrats. I have talked to many on both sides of the line, and everybody has echoed to me their concerns for election integrity. And I've had conversations about concerns about what happened in Wyndham, not just in 2020, but for many, many, many elections. We have our moderators set up the table where they count the votes on ballots that either can't go through the machines or the military Uokava ballots, and they do that 40 to 50 feet away from any meaningful observation. And that's unacceptable. They will deny that they do this, but it happens every single election, and it's got to stop. Now, I'm not saying that they're doing anything wrong. I'm not saying that there's any impropriety there, but I don't know. And what happened after November 3rd, 2020, with the Wyndham election and all of the issues, there were laws that were violated, there were procedures that were violated, and we can't have questions about our elections. It's unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. I've had many conversations with former Secretary of State Bill Gardner, and he agrees. And, you know, it's important that both parties be represented when those votes are being counted. That's the only way to ensure transparency. It's the only way to alleviate any potential questions after the fact, so that when because they will arise, you want to be able to have everybody represented with people there who actually saw what took place, and they can quell down any questions and say, you know, everything was done on the up and up. The other thing that I just want to point out is when I first read this bill, standing within 6 feet, I think is very, very, very important. The other thing that's in here is the line of sight of the electronic ballot counting devices. Now, I don't think that has been an issue for people across the state. I don't know that for a fact, but I do know in other states there was counting of ballots that were going on where they were doing that in a separate room. They actually put up and blocked windows where people could see in the other rooms. I don't think that's happened in this state, but it has happened in others. And if it can happen there, we want to make sure that it cannot happen here. So I support that as well. Thank you very much for listening to my testimony. This is a very important bill.
Thank you, Mr. Eyring. Questions from committee members? Representative Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just thank you for taking my question. I was just curious, in your case and maybe that of the previous witness, whether you've ever considered working as an election official in your town.
I've actually put my name in this year to hopefully be one of the people selected to be behind the rail, and I hope that this is passed so that we can make sure that the elections are done properly.
Good for you. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Representative Muirhead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there anything that prevents election officials from allowing people to be within 6 feet of hand count right now?
Yeah, there's limitations as to who can be behind the rail. But when I spoke with Secretary Gardner, his feeling was that there's no reason why those tables can't be moved up to the rail. So even though the law says you can't be behind the rail, those tables are set up where they're counting. It's not just 40 or 50 feet away. They have the machine set up in front of the table. You can't see anything that's going on. And when you take into consideration with what happened on November 3rd, 2020, the machines miscounted the votes for all 4 Republicans. And this, again, I'm just using this as an example. I believe in other towns that Democrats lost votes. In Wyndham, Republicans lost votes on election day. There was about 300 votes, give or take 3 votes for each of the 4 candidates. But one of the candidates gained 99 votes. That could be a machine issue, but you don't know. It raises questions. We don't want those questions. We're the first in the nation primary. We want to make sure that anybody who wants to take that privilege away from our state is not doing so with any basis to their accusations.
Any further questions for Mr. Eyring? Seeing none, thank
Thank you.
That is the last person I have signed up to speak on 1174. In regards to 1174, there was remote testimony. 51 people signed up in support of it. 135 people signed up opposed to it. And we had 4 people signed up in favor of it. I'm going to close the hearing on HB 174 and open the last hearing of our morning, HB 1197, relative to the definition of party for election purposes. Representative Craig, welcome back to the table and welcome to introduce your bill.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'll skip the introductions. I hope no one has forgotten me so quickly. HB 1197 covers a slightly different area from 1149 that we discussed earlier. My arguments are the same, covering the same material. This simply changes the definition of party from 4% to 1%. I would like to clarify that I do not believe, and I hope I did not imply, that there's any kind of an automatic trigger based on the performance of a third party. Okay. I just want to make it clear that I could be incorrect. The Secretary of State's office thinks the law hasn't changed since 1979. I will accept their historical research on that. But I do remember having heard in the past that changes to the percentages and number of nomination required has varied by legislation depending on the performance of third parties. So I just want to make it clear that I do not believe that there is any automatic trigger.
Thank you for that clarification. I probably misheard.
All right. With that, I know that there's going to be an amendment from Representative LaBranch. I have reviewed it, and I don't want to steal any of his thunder on that, but I do support his change. It is more inclusive than what my original bill is. I will take any questions.
Questions for Representative Craig? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Representative
Thank you.
Craig. Also signed up to speak on 1197 is Representative LaBranch.
And I will give you the amendment right away.
Thank you. Here, pass them down. Joe. Matt, and I'll give you one for Representative Craig. I mean, for Representative Ward. Thank you. Do you have you need another one? Okay, Representative LaBranch. Thank you.
Good morning again, members of the House Election Law Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Tony LaBranch, and I represent the town of Amherst. I also want to be very clear on this bill, and the previous one I testified on is that as the one of the 2 independents in this House, I want to be very clear that I'm not running for re-election. This is not for me. This is truly what I believe is the right thing to do. I'm not, like I said, I'm not running again, so this would not apply to me anyways. So, with that, I come before you today in support of House Bill 1197, which lowers the requirements to be considered an official party in New Hampshire. I also came with the amendment. This amendment improves the bill and increases the ways in which a party can be qualified as an official party and enjoy ballot access that comes with it. This legislation and the amendment I brought forward is an amazing step to giving the people more choice when it comes to election season. My constituents, as well as voters across the state and country, are tired of the two parties and want change and the opportunity to choose others. Currently in New Hampshire, from my understanding, is one of the worst states when it comes to ballot access for third parties. And I will also share that this is one of the first bills that the Independent Caucus officially endorses. And with that, I ask that you pass this bill with an ought to pass recommendation, ought to pass with amendment, I guess I should say. And with that, I can take any questions.
Questions for Representative LaBranche? Representative Ward, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question. I just wondered if you could shed some light on how you define political organization in line 7.
Thank you for the question. Do you mean the definition of a party or political organization like a PAC currently?
It says party shall also include any political organization.
I believe that's a term already used under existing law, and the amendment would simply just expand that to include. The one difference in my amendment is it's adding President of the United States to one of the elections that is used to reach that 1% threshold in the bill, and also adding that section that if there is a member of the general court that is of another party from the other two, that it would be an official party under the statute.
Question, Representative
Thank you.
Lane.
Thank you, Representative LaBranche. So would independent then be a party, since there's, I mean, assuming that you were running? So that's a political organization and would be a party is under this statute? I'm just trying to understand it.
Currently, I'm registered, thank you for the question. Currently, I'm registered as unaffiliated. I would remain unaffiliated, and that is not considered a party. No.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Thank you. Gotta work on this a little bit, excuse me. So if this were to pass and you or I were to become members of a party such as the Rent is Too Dang High party tomorrow, then that would become a recognized political party in this state?
That is correct. The most recent example I can think of is the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, when a few representatives a few terms ago switched to Libertarian. At the time, it was a recognized party. They had the option to become members of that party, but that would make it so that they could continue their ballot access and official party status, and other parties that could eventually come from this, such as the Forward Party or Progressive Party of New Hampshire.
Further questions, Representative Barry.
So this bill would, if somebody changed parties while they were in office, so a Republican became a Libertarian, then the Libertarians would automatically have ballot access statewide.
That's correct.
So, may I have a follow-up, Madam Chairman?
Follow up.
So, isn't it disingenuous for someone to run as a party and then get elected and then change parties? Because this would encourage that. This would encourage somebody hypothetically running as, let's say, a Democrat, and then getting elected and then becoming a forward progressive, whatever. Isn't that kind of are we encouraging people to be kind of disingenuous to the voters by basically Trojan horsing as a different party?
Thank you for the question. I would say that current statute actually encourages it, as we saw you have to run as either a Democrat or a Republican to get elected, and I don't believe that party affiliation is something that anybody takes lightly. It is part of our fundamental identity as human beings. You know, people who are unaffiliated for a reason. People who identify as Democrats for a reason. And I believe that everybody should have an opportunity to affiliate with the party that they truly identify with. I don't believe that libertarians should be forced to be part of the Republican Party and run as Republicans and keep that affiliation. I believe everybody should be true to themselves and identify with whatever party that they truly believe in. And I don't believe it's disingenuous to the voters to switch parties. I believe that's just a reality of the political situation here in New Hampshire.
Representative Muirhead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If there were one member of the General Court who identified as unaffiliated, why wouldn't the label unaffiliated become a party that shows up on the ballot in the general election?
Thank you for the question. Unaffiliated, I believe, by definition means lacking of a party. You are not identifying with any party. When you register to vote, if you leave that section of the voter registration form blank, you will just automatically be considered unaffiliated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Further question?
Could I have a follow-up question? Madam Chair? Yes, thank you. If someone were to identify affirmatively as an independent and not just leave the section blank, and then the word independent would appear on our general election ballots as a separate party, what would prevent 30 or 40 different candidates from filing to run as independents?
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure I understand that distinction you're making, but I will speak a little bit to the fact of being an independent and would that be considered a party. As many of you probably do not know, other countries do have independent coalitions where to meet ballot access requirements, independents form a coalition. They probably have nothing in common when it comes to political ideology or platform, but for the ease of access of to the ballot, these independents form parties. I know Germany, the Czech Republic is also another one where these independent parties, they're only parties in the formal sense that they would get ballot access and it would make it easier for independents, such as one of my constituents who does want to run as an independent next year to be on the ballot.
Further question?
One more, but I'm sorry to drag this out, Madam Chair. Thank you very kindly. I don't really understand what the screening function would be that would prevent numerous candidates from identifying as independents and all appearing on the general election ballot.
Thank you for the question. As the amendment states, it is a member of the general court that must change their party affiliation for it to be identified as a party, so it doesn't have anything to do with any candidates that will run. It says that if this party were to become officially recognized, they would get a they would have a state-sponsored primary and they would be an official party, just like the Democratic Party, just like the Republican Party, and just like the Libertarian Party was in 2018.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good morning, Representative LaBranch. Wouldn't facilitating the creation of new parties risk fragmenting the political system and even lead to a greater challenge in terms of getting things done, policy, laws, and so forth being accomplished?
Thank you for the question. In relation to that question, I would say to my previous testimony on previous bills such as ranked choice voting would be one option. It would be more representative of the people if we had multiple political parties to choose from. That and my party list proportional legislation, which I introduced to the Legislative Administration Committee, which is an electoral system used in almost every single European democracy where people vote for their local candidates and they also mark on the ballot which party they prefer. And then that legislature is made proportional to whatever percentage each party got. So I'm saying this bill, in conjunction with ranked choice voting and other electoral reforms, would not fragment the system and just lead to a more consensus-based system where negotiation and cooperation are paramount, and it would lessen the divisions and hyperpartisanship that we see in our democracy today.
Further questions? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is a practical one. How many party columns do you think will fit on an 8.5 by 14-inch ballot? And what happens if 20 or 30 parties are created by members of the General Court for an election?
Thank you for the question. In my experience being a member of this body, not many people have expressed that they would like to change parties or form a new party. That was not even my intention in leaving my previous party. But I think realistically, we would only see either one or two, that being the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, because they have a track record of having members switch to that party, or maybe the Forward Party, or maybe a new progressive party that would come about. But realistically speaking, because of the current system, no ranked choice voting, no proportional representation, these parties, realistically speaking, would probably not have a chance of winning, because that would be vote splitting, and vote splitting is an issue that I take very seriously, which is why I endorse the ideas of ranked choice voting and proportional representation, so that the people of this state, the people of this country, should be represented. Just because you're a libertarian and you have no chance of winning in New Hampshire does not mean that you do not deserve representation in this body. I know in 2016, the Libertarian Party, I believe, got 3 to 4% of the vote in the election, which would have entitled them under a proportional representation system to about 16 seats in this legislature. Yet they only had 3 as a result of switching parties from the Republican Party. I'm saying that 3% of the population, 4% of the population goes unrepresented in this chamber, and that they deserve representation, and I don't believe that is a controversial idea.
Further questions? We might have another speaker to deal with the ballot issue. Thank you, Representative LaBranche. Also signed up to speak on this bill is Katie Gargano from the Secretary of State's office. Representative Wilhelm, we have a handout that's going out now. Here. Here, Joe. Welcome. All right, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, for the record, my name is Katie Gargano, and I'm representing the Secretary of State's office on House Bill 1197. The Secretary of State's office opposes this bill because of the space on the ballot. Lowering the requirement down to 1% to retain a party column would require significant changes to our current ballot layout. I provided you all a copy of the ballot for the committee to see as an example. As you can see, adding another column or multiple columns to accommodate the many other parties would not fit in the portrait position and may force the ballot to be either landscape or on multiple pages. This will increase printing costs of the ballot and could cause several formatting issues. We feel that 1% of the votes cast is not enough support for the party from our voters. Any questions?
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. We have an amendment in front of us that amends the proposal to say party shall also include any political organization that has at least one member that serves in the New Hampshire General Court. Under current state law, it's my understanding that the Young Republicans, the Young Democrats, the Committee to Elect House Republicans, Committee to Elect House Democrats, and other political groups are noted as political organizations in New Hampshire. Is that a correct understanding?
I'm not positive. Yes? Yes.
Follow-up?
Follow-up.
If those organizations are political organizations under the law, would this amendment not allow all of those other organizations that are really subsets of current parties to also be on the ballot if a member chose to run under that ticket? And expand it further even more, that we'd have a name for multiple organizations, because as a member, you can be a part of multiple political organizations.
Just so you know, you are in an impossible situation in a new job between someone who works for the parties in the past and in front of and cannot see the people from your office who are either nodding their head in regards to answering or not.
I need a mirror.
So the answer would be yes, that would be true, Representative Sweeney.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I felt terrible for you.
I'm good. Thank you.
Really trying to get my feet wet here.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear what the conversation is on the way back to the office. All right. Any other questions? Representative McDonald.
Just a comment. Since I'm from Londonderry, thank you for your choice of community for this ballot. That's all.
Okay. Representative Muirhead, did you have a question? All right. Any further questions? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. That is the last speaker I have for 1197. If Representative Terosian could get me the blue sheet. In regards to 1197, people did sign up online to testify remotely. A total of 6 signed up in support of the proposed legislation. 2 people signed up in opposition. You now have an amendment and a sample ballot in regards to your consideration of this. And 1 person has signed up in favor of HB 1197. I'm going to close the hearing on HB 1197. And the next thing on our agenda is executive session, commencing with HB 1423. My plan is to go through them sequentially, but if somebody has a reason to change them because there are amendments coming or something like that, I am certainly open to that. There was an amendment I expected to be down here today that I contacted staff about, so I'm going to have to get that straightened out. So we are taking a break until 5 of, because I need to track down an amendment. Welcome back, everybody. This is the House Election Law Committee. We are commencing about 15 minutes, we are commencing a half an hour late, and I apologize, executive session scheduled for today. The first bill is 1423. Before we take up 1423, two things. One, I have scheduled a meeting for the election law next Thursday. So you will be getting a notice of public hearings and executive session next Thursday, the 10th. We will have session on the 17th. There is a rumor we will have session on the afternoon of the 16th in addition to the 17th. Apparently the 16th will be the State of the State governor formality thing, and we do usually meet after that. I'm not quite sure how that is going to go given the location issues we have now. But I know for sure session is scheduled on the 17th, so we will not be meeting as a committee that week, given that we have a session that day. So I wanted to cover that. You should also have 3 amendments in front of you, 1 to 1010, 1 to 1442. We received that at the public hearing on 1442, and another one to CACR 15. So with that, we're going to start. The first bill is 1423. This has to do with a fund relative to campaign contributions and expenditures and making an appropriation for it. We had a public hearing on this on the 19th of January. Do I have a motion on 1423? Representative Groen.
Madam Chair, I move that we find this bill to be ITL.
Is there a second?
I second that, Madam Chair.
Representative Groen moves, Representative Sweeney seconds that 1423 is ITL. Representative Groen, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would, Madam Chair. Campaign financing has long been a controversial issue at both state and federal levels. Legislatures and courts have spoken on the issue. Over time, this has produced both limits to contribution and transparency regarding contributions. Transparency is provided by the detailed reporting that is required of all political candidates and PACs. Notwithstanding ads that are from time to time placed that attack dark money, which I would note are paid for by dark money, we can, from our existing laws, determine where political money comes from. In New Hampshire, we have contribution limits for every level of candidates. Different candidates in the various races raise different amounts of money, and that's based on hard work, could be charisma, the amount of contacts the person has, and possibly influence. There's no limit on self-funding for campaigns. HB 1423 provides a mechanism for public funding of campaigns, but it does not outlaw or prevent any of the private campaign financing that is presently allowed by law. While the mechanism for qualifying for public financing is creative in the approach of this bill, it does not and will not inherently make for cleaner elections. And finally, I would say a major reason why I oppose this is it just seems incongruous to me that the government that we would come to be involved in would pay for us to get here. And that just does not seem like the right approach. So, Madam Chair, I would move this bill ITL.
Does anybody else want to speak to this bill? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote against the motion of inexpedient to legislate. This is essentially a voluntary program. The candidates have to choose to participate in it. The public has to choose to donate to the fund. It establishes expenditure limits for anybody that participates. Frankly, there are very few state representatives that follow the campaign contribution limits or expenditure limits that are provided for them under state law, and I'm not so sure very many people would elect to participate in this program. But given that it's not requiring state funding to support it, it's all done voluntarily by both the donors and the candidates, I see no reason at all not to support the concept, and let's see if there are people that buy into the idea of a public-funded or private contribution program for funding our elections.
Further, Representative Barry.
Was this a general question of the committee? Did this bill did it have a fiscal note? I can't remember. It did. What was the cost? It did. What was the? I don't have it in front of me. I apologize. What was the?
I could
what was the
speak to
cost?
that, Madam Chair.
Representative Groen. Oh,
I could
oh,
speak
sorry,
to that, Madam
Representative
Chair.
Muirhead. Sorry, I'm hearing voices.
This bill would fund the law with a $1 appropriation, so it would create a line item in the budget for it, but it would require a further act of the legislature to fully fund it. So it would not, this system would not become operational as a result of passing this bill.
We had 4 early bills because that needed to go to other things, and I think this was one of them. That's why we had a public hearing on one yesterday, because we needed to get them out of committee. But the fiscal note, as many of ours do, was indeterminable. Anybody else? Representative Barry, did you want to speak?
I was supporting the motion for ITL because of what we don't know how much this is going to cost, and it seems to be a solution in search of a problem at this point. But it's this kind of open-ended bookend of, basically writing a blank check. And to Representative Gruen's point, it is deeply disturbing that the people who will be that will be using government funds to get elected to then run government will then be making the decisions on how government runs. That seems like not a good circular system to set up. So that is one of the reasons I'll be supporting ITL.
Anybody else? Representative Muirhead.
One quick comment. Thank you, Madam Chair. I did give specific cost estimates of it in my testimony, but I don't want to get into those details. I do appreciate Representative Groen's characterization of the bill as creative, and I look forward to continuing our discussions at a philosophic level about this idea, regardless of what happens today.
Thank you. I appreciate the reference to discussions on a philosophical level. I will say it is true. The prime sponsor of this bill, Representative Porter, mentioned that your chair was on a committee that met over the summer. Also present in the room, I believe, who participated, and my memory fails me often at this point, was Olivia Zink. And I think that it is an interesting concept, but I struggle with the problem it is trying to solve. Not that there isn't a problem, but having a consensus on what the problem is the problem that we're trying to solve, having any candidate run, regardless of financial independence or ability to finance it, which raises issues as to whether or not one is trying to get into the game, so to speak, for financial benefit, because there's lots of discussion about people being in politics for financial benefit. And our campaign contributions are really the wave of where the influence is going to come from in the future, given that the reports on the money that went into the last federal election are that there was more, quote, dark money spent, and I'll just say both parties, so there's data to indicate one party got a lot more than the other. There's more dark money being spent, and in addition to that, we now are treading in the line of what we're seeing in some of our bills here today, which is the private funding of election duties, whether it is in PACs that sent much money to help election officials in certain communities throughout the country, and that money ended up getting funneled in a particular way, or whether it is money being spent to fund election duties, such as audits or other things, because then you enter into a whole realm of sort of a different question. So I come back to what is the problem we are trying to solve, and I will tell you, I've had discussions with John Pudner, who's a big guy on the campaign finance, former federal elected official, and I have suggested that maybe federally we should just do it the way we do in New Hampshire, is not really pay anybody, don't give them big pensions, and they won't want to stay long, and we'll get a whole different crop of candidates. Representative Groen, did you have anything else?
I do have a question. My understanding from the hearing was that the qualification for receiving state funding was by raising a certain amount of independent donations. But once that level of donations had been reached, the big lump of money, so to speak, was going to come from state coffers.
Right. Right. The dollars go out, you advocate for them, and then you get supplemented. Any further discussion? Representative Lane?
Not surprisingly, I'm sure to anybody, I'll vote against the ITL, but I look at this as a campaign finance reform, and I think we all have said we wanted that. And part of it is you have to take baby steps, I think, and I just saw this as a good first effort to do that. And it works in other places, and see if it works in New Hampshire, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, and we've tried. And I just hate to see us say we want to try to solve some campaign finance issues and then not do anything. So that would just be so.
Well, if we passed it, it would address one of our other representatives who's advocating for further definition on what political expenditures can be used for, because it's got further detail in it than the statute does. Is there any further discussion on HB 1423? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll for the vote. The motion on the floor is ITL 1423 FNA.
Representative McDonald?
Yes.
That's okay, go ahead.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien?
Yes.
Representative Sweeney?
Yes.
Representative Hayward? Yes. Representative Alexander?
Yes.
Representative Terosian?
Yes.
Representative Berry?
Yes.
Representative Groen?
Yes.
Representative Quayle?
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm?
No.
Representative Ward?
No.
Representative Bergeron?
No.
Representative Murray? No. Representative Hamer?
No.
Representative Lane?
No.
Representative Freitas? No. Representative Hamblett?
No.
Representative Muirhead?
No.
So it's 11 to 9.
Not yet.
No, Representative Griffin?
Yes.
Sorry.
1423 will be reported. ITL 11 to 9. I'm assuming that there will be a minority report.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to have reports. We're not going to make the calendar for next. We could make the calendar for the 17th. So if we can have those in by Monday afternoon to me, or if you really want, we could adopt the old practice of we don't let you out of the building till they're done. But Monday afternoon by email to me, so we could get them in the calendar for when we can get them submitted to the clerk's office for Wednesday, so it could go in the calendar to be voted on the session on the 17th. The next, and that will be the same for all bills we vote on today, Monday afternoon, with the goal of getting it in the calendar for the session we have the 17th or 16th and 17th. The next bill we have scheduled for executive session is 1482 for ranked choice voting for federal and state offices. We have a few ranked choice voting bills. This is the one that establishes such a process for the largest number of offices, federal and state offices, and this was an early bill. So that is why, if you're wondering, this was scheduled and the other ranked choice voting bills were not scheduled. Do I have a motion on 1482? Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I make a motion to find House Bill 1482 FN inexpedient to legislate.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I second that motion.
Seconded by Representative Sweeney. Representative Terosian, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, please. So while this is an interesting concept, and I know it's being used in Maine, and we in fact heard testimony from, I believe, the Assistant Secretary of State in Maine, there are some problems with it, in my opinion, that make it not ready to be something I think we should do here in New Hampshire. Two of the major items were, or let me back up and say that one of the things we heard in testimony was that this bill would help allow or make it more likely that a third-party candidate could get elected. And in reality, in testimony we heard in unquestioning that in Maine it hasn't made a difference at all. So I don't think this is really going to change anything there if we were to adopt it. But the other problem I see is we heard in Maine that they have the vote tabulated within a week. That won't work in New Hampshire, where the results have to be out, that it has to be completed by the day of the election. So that's a problem. Further, I would say that, you know, I know one of the arguments was to solve a plurality versus a majority vote. Well, when you have several people on a ballot, and let's face it, New Hampshire, with the number of state reps we have, you have many districts where you're voting for anywhere from 2 to 10 state representatives. I am a door knocker when I'm out campaigning, and I found that a fairly big percentage of people that I come in contact with don't even know who their reps are, and quite frankly, they're lucky if they can, in a district that has, say, 4 or 5 reps, really have a little knowledge on 1 or 2 of them. So I think, you know, if we were to adopt this, you're going to have many people voting, you know, down the line for 3 choices, 5 choices, whatever it may be, and really not having a good, clear idea. It's kind of like rolling the dice. Well, let's put this person down for number 3. I think it's going to dilute the meaning of somebody really doing their due diligence and voting for somebody that I think will be the best. I think at the end of the day, you should vote for the person or persons that you believe is going to do the best job. So for those reasons, I think that the proper thing to do with this bill at this time is find it inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the bill? Representative Bergeron.
No.
I'm going for the red light on the mic.
Okay.
Representative Hamblett.
Okay. Hi, thank you, Madam Chair, sorry. So to answer Representative Terosian's question, I believe the reason that Maine allows the results, it gives them a whole week, is because they allow 3 days for their election totals to come in, whereas in New Hampshire, we required to come in the same day. So we could do it much faster. The machines that the Secretary of State's office would use to tabulate the ranked choice part would be very quick. They would be very quick. So we could probably get the results the same night, if not the next day. And I think that's my only comment for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion on the floor, which is ITL 1482? Seeing none, I'm going to
Madam
ask.
Chair.
Oh, Representative Groen.
I have some interest in the concept of ranked choice voting, but mostly for primaries and mostly for primaries at the federal level and the major state race level. I certainly would be interested in some enabling legislation, which we have elsewhere. And I just want that noted, that I think there's some benefit to talking about it in those cases.
Thank you. I think it just came to my mind that it doesn't sound like something I want when I have a candidate that I really want, but when I don't really care, it sounds sort of interesting. And I won't say what races are causing me to think that. All right, any further discussion on this bill? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is an ITL on 1482.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward. Yes. Representative Alexander. Not
Absent.
here, okay. Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Groen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm. Representative Ward.
No.
Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Murray. No. Representative Hamer.
Yes. Oh, they're not? It's Christmas.
Yeah.
If anybody is listening to this and staff, can they please verify whether or not the mics that are at the table are all working? Because the lighting system that usually corresponds with whether it's on or off is not working at a few of our tables where Representative Lane is seated. All right, why don't you continue?
Representative Lane.
No.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Representative Muirhead.
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So it's 14 to 6.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, yes.
may I change my vote?
Yes, you
No.
may. She hasn't, my new rule, it's a free-for-all until we actually announce it.
I would like to
All
change
right.
my vote to no.
All right, Representative Freitas votes no.
Okay, so no way, it can't be. It must be, oh, you just changed it. Okay. So it must be 13 to 7.
So
No,
it's 12 to 7.
Yep. 6, 7, 12 to 7.
Okay. Yes, 1482 will be reported, ITL vote being 12 to 7. I will assume that there's going to be a majority and a minority report submitted on this bill. The next bill we have scheduled for executive session today is 1484, requiring a forensic audit of the 2020 elections. This is also an early bill, hence the scheduling today. This bill would also establish a fund to cover the costs of conducting the audit. This had a public hearing yesterday. Do I have a motion? Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move to ITL this bill, and I would like to speak to that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Prudhomme O'Brien. You're recognized to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday, we went through some difficult testimony on this bill. Testimony that, in some cases, I found to be dripping with possible violent innuendo related to inaccurate assumptions about my previous votes and those of other people on this committee and our motives. Despite all of that, I put that aside and tried to focus solely on the merits of this bill. And the bill starts off with a lot of the words shall rather than may. And it says that we shall appoint a third party to conduct the forensic audit. It shall be completed by October 1st. It shall, a report shall be given detailing the findings. And we're also told that it will be free to taxpayers due to private donations. But with the word shall, if we were to pass this bill, we have to do it. And if the money is not raised, then that's just a wish. The private donation and the fact that this would be free wouldn't then be happening. And I think that's a risk to take that's quite a bit to ask of the taxpayers. There is also an independent third party that would be conducting this audit, but how would that person be chosen? And I think that is another situation that could cause a lot of turmoil and unhappiness of the people that we heard testimony from yesterday, if my recent experience is to be a guide. This bill seeks to put into motion the audit that will find and explain discrepancies in voter data, ballot data, and tabulations. But we consider these very serious issues on this committee, and we work very hard to avoid them wherever possible. In my own community of Derry in 2016, I saw that many state laws were not being followed, and I addressed them, and in so doing, I had to explain each and every RSA every time I talked about it to be accurate enough to affect any change. And we did have election monitors in Derry in the next election, similar to what is happening in Windham in their next election because of the problems that they have had. Now, if we could get perfect people to conduct our elections, we would do so. But without having that, we have all of the laws that we have to address these issues, and I hope that we can do them moving forward. I checked with the Secretary of State's office about any specific complaints in the days after the election in 11/3/2020, if there were any presidential election candidates that spoke to him about problems that they had had, and there were none. There were no complaints that came to that office about that election, and that would have been the way to address this appropriately. So I agree with Secretary Scanlon that a statewide audit is not necessary, and it would not be the way to address some of the serious concerns that we have about specifically Windham again. And I did read that whole report. I was up late last night. I finally got that report yesterday, and I was up late reading it. But I don't see how this bill would address all of them moving forward. So for that reason, I'm voting ITL, but that does not mean I do not care about the issues that were so passionately described yesterday.
Thank you, Representative Prudhomme O'Brien, for that. Is there anybody else who wants to speak to this motion? Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I will be voting in favor of the ITL, some items were brought up that are a little troubling to me, but I don't believe this is the vehicle to solve that. I think going forward, we need to look forward, not look back. But having said that, I may be able to support one of the other bills that addresses this that does a sample. But to spend the time and resources and money to go back and open that back up, I don't think solves anything. What I would like to see us do, though, is going forward to have the ability to be able to sample and do some audits, because in business, audits are something that's done on a regular basis to ensure that you have compliance, whether they be errors, unintentional errors, or something worse than that, where people aren't following procedure and or perhaps have an ulterior motive and there's some wrongdoing. So I think going forward, I think all of us in this room know we have many citizens in this state that are concerned about voter integrity. So going forward, we do need to, in my opinion, do more to restore confidence in the process. Thank you.
Representative Barry.
I want to kind of echo what Representative Terosian said. I have said in this committee many, many, many times, in fact, I think literally the first day we met, I believe the number one issue facing this body is people's lack of faith in the elections. That comes from a variety of sources. It comes from the Windham audit. It comes from things people say, elected officials, things that they said. That being said, it is time to look forward. There will be an audit bill that comes before this body. This body will pass that audit bill. We will have forward-looking audits. The Secretary of State himself stood, I believe it was in this room, and said he supports audits. We have to fix the problem. The problem is the lack of faith in the election. I said it on the, I think, second or third day. 33% of Granite Staters are not extremely confident in the outcome of a New Hampshire election. It's unacceptable. This bill will not solve that problem. We know that from the Wyndham audit. This bill will not solve the lingering questions of 2022. I don't know if there's anything that we could do that would solve those questions. And for my friends on the other side, I don't think there's anything that we could do to solve the lingering questions from 2016. What we can do is come together and find a forward-looking approach that will restore people's faith in these elections. And I'll be supporting the ITL for that purpose. I want to thank the sponsors. They are trying to address a very legitimate concern. The underlying problem, once again, is people do not have faith in the elections. I believe firmly that there will be people that do not vote because they do not have faith in the elections. And just as my friends on the other side of the aisle are very concerned about young people being suppressed and all of that, I am very concerned about voter suppression of people who do not have faith in our process. This is not the way to fix it. This is backwards looking, but this body will pass an audit bill that's forward looking.
Thank you. Representative Groen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo what has been said here, and I would add that I also believe that this bill does not have anywhere near the amount of necessary detail, specificity that's required to perform a good quality audit. And I also, I think just common sense would say that it is virtually impossible to complete such an audit no later than October 1, 2022, which again is I believe a fatal flaw in the bill. I also firmly support the concept of having regular and routine audits on on elections in New Hampshire. It amazes me, it truly amazes me that we spend many times as much money protecting our dollars as we do our votes. And I think that's a travesty, and I think we do need to do this. With my colleague, Representative Terosian, I am interested in pursuing one of the other bills that would do a smaller look at the 2020 election, but I don't believe that this bill is feasible to accomplish, and certainly doesn't have the specificity.
Thank you. Further comments from committee members? Representative McDonald.
Yes, Madam Chairman, for all of the reasons so eloquently stated by my colleagues, I will also be voting ITL.
Further questions or comments? Representative Bergeron.
And I would like to echo Representative McDonald's comments as well, and I will also be voting ITL on this.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will also be supporting the inexpedient to legislate motion.
Because I know it's a sense of humor, I'll just remind you all we have a vote, and that's how we find out how you're going to vote.
Yes, yes. I'm aware. Prefacing my comments.
All right.
Our state did have 15 recounts after the 2020 elections. None of the recounts had any change in the election night results from who the winners were versus who the defeated candidates were. One of them had obviously the big discrepancy in Wyndham, which this committee took up last year, passed an audit bill, and proceeded with the process that we incorporated all stakeholder desires and design for that audit. So I think we can have faith in the New Hampshire election systems. I agree with what Representative Berry said, and I've agreed with what all the members here have said. Yesterday during the committee hearing on this bill, my name was referenced several times by those testifying in favor of the legislation. And I wanted to take this opportunity to make it clear. I am no one's puppet. I am here representing the 30,000 roughly people of Salem, New Hampshire that constitutes Rockingham District 8. I represent my own views and I vote my own views. I have not always made anyone happy, and I think the chair can attest to my history of not always going along with what I have been asked. But that's not why I'm voting ITL today. I'm voting ITL today because we did have a number of recounts after the 2020 election that were a representative sample, I would say, of districts across the state of New Hampshire. And those individual recounts should put faith in our elections that we do get it right in New Hampshire. And when there are towns and communities that do make mistakes and have errors, we do correct them. We corrected and made sure that Wyndham had accurate results at the end of the day. We have this process in Bedford now where the state is investigating as well, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. And I agree that we should be forward-looking and not backward-looking when it comes to the audits that we do approve of and create a schedule and a process for. And I would just urge the entire committee to vote with us on an expedient to legislate. Thank you.
Further comments? Seeing none, Representative Wilhelm.
I will also be voting ITL on this bill.
All right, we are going to have the vote now on this bill, 1484. All right, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is ITL HB 1484.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward.
Yes.
Joe's not here. Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Groen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm.
Yes.
Representative Ward. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Hamer.
Yes.
Representative Lane. Representative Freitas.
Yes. Yeah, that's,
Representative Hamblett.
yes.
Representative Muirhead.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
20 to
Yes.
0.
The vote is 19 to 0.
Yeah, 19 to 0, right.
Right? I think so. Did you? Yeah. Okay. I am probably not going to put this on the consent calendar because I think it's going to get pulled. So with the committee understanding why I'm not asking for that question, and so it will go in the regular calendar. The next bill before us today for executive session is HB 1496. Do I have a motion on Representative Barry? Did you have anything on 1496?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I'm sorry. I'm moving on from the next one. This 1496, I am asking the committee's indulgence on a continuance on the bill. I am working with the committee. Excuse me. It's been I was up very late last night. The sponsors. I am working on an amendment with the sponsor to try to reach some kind of compromise language. I think that there is some appetite for the concept of allowing more access to the voter checklist than currently exists, but it needs some tweaking. So I'm asking for a little bit of indulgence in that because I've been really busy this week and haven't had to get the amendment ready.
All right, I am going to indulge that request, and if any committee member has a bill that they see in executive session that they're working with the sponsor on an amendment and it is not done, please feel free to bring that forward. Keeping in mind, and again, whip out your calendars, I anticipate that our last executive session on bills before crossover will be the 9th and or the 10th of March. That is the week before our deadline. I want to make sure we have our votes and reports out in plenty of time. But there will be bills, even though we might be ready to do them, they're not going to be scheduled till after town elections. So we're going to have that opportunity to vote on anything you might want to continue to work on one of those days. All right, so 1496 will be renoticed for a further executive session. The next bill before us is CACR 15. CACR 15 lowers the age to vote in a primary to 17 for those who will be 18 in the general election. I want to make this comment for this bill and all of the CACRs. You might recall, I think it was done in session, that I I made a comment that the bills refer to boxes and check marks when the current practice is ovals. I want to thank the sponsors of all these amendments. I emailed them. They contacted OLS in regards to changing the language. The Secretary of State's office got involved. And I essentially got told, why was I making a big deal about this? Because we passed a CACR 2 sessions ago and nobody raised an issue. And I'm like, because it wasn't in front of me. So the Secretary of State's office is going to work with OLS, and there will probably be a change to these CACRs or any CACRs for the language relating to how the ballot is actually supposed to look. Because the OLS is saying there's a statute that says it can be or, and the Secretary of State is saying, but the statute is directing a specific box, and we're going to get that worked out in enrolled bills. That will not be considered a substantive amendment to a bill. So I just wanted to clear that up as to the CACRs. So we have this in front of us, and I believe you should also have a proposed amendment in front of you, Amendment 2022-044H. Is there a member who wants to make a motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I would move that we move ought to pass on Amendment 2022-0448H to CACR 15.
Is there a second?
Second that, Madam Chair.
Representative Berry, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would like to. The first of which, Madam Chair, was recognize that this is a non-germane amendment, so if we do take up this amendment, we will have to have a separate hearing on the amendment. If the committee will indulge me, I'll speak to the underlying bill first, and then the amendment. The underlying bill is actually a concept that I'm not diametrically opposed to. However, this body has rejected it several times. I believe that the last committee report was actually written by you, Madam Chairman, as to why it was inexpedient to legislate. So when looking at that, the underlying bill was basically a non-starter. It wasn't going to happen. We have had many, many, many bills that have attempted to, eat around the edges of the domicile resident question. And this would be a bill, a constitutional amendment, that would finally solve the question of who gets to vote in New Hampshire. So what it does is it clarifies that only New Hampshire residents may vote in New Hampshire elections. I believe that this is a debate that this committee should have. I believe it should be a hearing that this committee should have, and I think it's a vote that this committee should have to finally put that question to bed, or at least get on the record about it. It is my firm belief that only New Hampshire residents should be able to vote. That does not mean college students cannot vote here. That just means residents can vote here. I encourage young people to move here, become residents, and vote here. Merely showing up on election day and declaring yourself having a granite state of mind and casting a ballot is not a thing in my world. So that's why I brought this amendment forward. It will be a fun debate. We might even have a little bit of it now. But I hope the committee passes it, and I firmly look forward to it.
Further discussion on the motion which has been made, which is in regards to Amendment 2022-0448. Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to have heard Representative Berry indicate that this is a non-germane amendment, and it is very substantive as well. It eliminates entirely the original intent of Constitutional Amendment 15, which was to allow youths who would be 18 by the general election to participate in the primary if they hadn't quite turned 18, which is a couple months earlier. The primary is a couple months earlier. That's eliminated entirely. And then it introduces the words, the person has to be domiciled and have primary residency in New Hampshire in order to participate in all elections. That is extremely open-ended, and I'm thinking of examples of military who have the opportunity to declare New Hampshire as their residence if they entered the service at the time they were living in New Hampshire. They will not be domiciled in New Hampshire any longer, and it's really no longer their primary residency. There are a lot of issues here. To throw this into the Constitution is a real concern. You know, we can fight it out on among our RSAs and change language there, as we do almost every session. We have debates over the subject, but I have real serious concerns about putting this very restrictive language into our state constitution, and therefore I will oppose the amendment, and if the amendment passes, I will oppose the bill too.
Further discussion? Representative Groen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I campaigned in the fall of 2020, and as I've talked to people since, this is one of the major issues that I find amongst the voters that I talk to. And I've asked repeatedly who should vote in New Hampshire. And for the average citizen who does not really understand or know the difference between domicile or residency or what makes those things up, the automatic answer is a New Hampshire citizen or a New Hampshire resident. If I follow that up and ask them what they mean, they say somebody who lives in New Hampshire, pays taxes in New Hampshire, has their car registered in New Hampshire, etc. And it is almost exclusively that answer. And by the way, when I'm campaigning, particularly in the last weeks before the election, I do not follow a party list when I campaign. I go door to door to door to door and talk to everybody who will come to the door. And I find that answer to come back again and again. And I think it's just a common sense approach that those who vote in New Hampshire should be vested in New Hampshire, should sort of own New Hampshire. I understand the concern that Representative Bergeron has, and we probably would need to have further modification to have this meet that muster. But the requirement for this, I believe, is very strong, and I think doing this would be part of what would help voters to be confident that their vote is counting in New Hampshire.
Further discussion? This is as to an amendment, and Representative Berry is right. It would be non-germane and require rescheduling. Representative Muirhead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would welcome a chance to really debate and also inform ourselves of about all the particulars having to do with this question, which might require a different bill on a different occasion, so we can learn more about how federal law constrains what states do in defining who can vote in different elections. And so I would welcome that. I'm not sure this is, I'm going to pre-announce, I think I will oppose the passage of this, because I don't think this is giving us that occasion.
Thank you. Representative Hayward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would address Representative Bergeron's point in a simple way, to say that the military is covered under this, would be covered under this, under the federal law known as the Soldiers and Sailors Relief Act. I myself maintained a domicile residence for an extended period of time. I could get into great detail, which I don't think we need to do today, especially if we're going to bring this up again. But so I'll reserve that discussion for anyone who might want it till later. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion which is on the floor, which is an amendment to CACR 15. Representative Lane.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, you had your hand up before. I wrote it down and I missed
It's okay. I'm sure we will have this debate. I hate to sound like the lawyer, but after doing it for 40 years, I can't help myself. If we're going to do this, we need to define domicile and primary residency. in here, so people know what it is. Because this will just invite the court to go back, and we'll be in court again as to what domicile and residency mean. So if we're going to have this debate, and if we're going to do this, we need to do it so that's clear in here, so that we don't end up back in court having the same, it's been 10, 15 years now that we've been going back and forth on this, so that would be my only, and I will not announce my vote.
If this committee could come up with a solution as to audits that made everyone happy, and a solution that finally resolved the domicile residency definition issue, we would have like gold stars just falling from the sky.
Yeah, we could just dissolve. We'd be done.
Drinks on the chair.
I will say that I'm not sure that everyone thought we really did a great job in Wyndham, but that's okay.
Well, I
personally
no,
think
that's
we did a
very
great
that's very clear. That's why I sort of said that, because as I recall, when we did do Wyndham, everybody did thought we did a great job until they did the audit in Wyndham. All right, so, which is often the case, and I understand that. So, any further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is the amendment to CACR 15? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll on amendment 2022-0448.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien. Yes. Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Browen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm. Representative Ward. Representative Bergeron.
No.
Representative Murray. Representative Hamer.
That's
No.
only
Representative Lane. No. Representative Freitas.
No.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Representative Muirhead.
No.
Madam Chair.
yes.
Okay, so we got the, yeah, 13, right?
The vote is 10-9. The amendment carries. The next bill on, so that will be, we are going to move on from further consideration of CACR 15. It has been amended, and a further hearing will be necessary. The next item on the agenda is CACR 19. This constitutional amendment provides that all elections shall be conducted using paper ballots. We had a public hearing on this bill on January 13th. Do I have a motion on CACR 19? Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
I move that this ought to pass.
Is there a second?
I second the motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Prudhomme O'Brien, would you like to speak to your motion?
Paper ballots provide an opportunity to check and see what the intent of the voter was. And for that reason, I believe this ought to pass.
Thank you, Representative Prudhomme O'Brien. Anyone else, any other comments on this bill? Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Waiting for my microphone to be functioning.
Mine's having a problem with mine.
Wait a minute, you know.
I think it's when a lot of people have their mics on all at once. I've noticed that. If you turn your mic off, I think it seems to.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee for just indulging me as I speak some more. I am a big fan of this constitutional amendment. I wanted to thank the sponsor for bringing this forward. As Representative Prudhomme O'Brien noted, this constitutional amendment is really fairly simple. It just puts into place what our current state statute requires for how we administer our elections utilizing paper ballots, and puts that into our state's constitution. As we know, we change state statute frequently in this body. A lot of the legislation that we've already voted on today does it. Any legislation we always vote on will change state statute, and there is that higher threshold to change the state constitution. By inserting this constitutional amendment into the Constitution in the present moment that we're in, we will ensure that the state of New Hampshire continues using paper ballots until such time that the public overwhelmingly decides that they no longer want to use paper ballots, as a new constitutional amendment would have to go through the process. To me, I believe that would effectively enshrine paper ballots in the state of New Hampshire for the foreseeable future, and I'm not sure it would ever be undone. I think it's a system that works, as the former, and it is so bizarre to say, former Secretary of State Bill Gardner would famously say, you cannot hack a pencil. In a time when there are so many questions about other states utilizing computer forms to fill out ballots, and municipalities in other states developing tablet systems for balloting, I think it is paramount that we maintain a paper ballot for New Hampshire citizens that they fill out with a black Sharpie. And I want a shameless plug for everyone listening. Please fill out the oval completely when you do vote, because that really does help in ensuring there's a accurate count at the end of the night. And for that reasons, I would just recommend everybody vote to pass on this constitutional amendment. I hope we can get this to the voters this year. And overwhelmingly, I think we would see the Granite State vote in the affirmative. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sweeney. Anyone else? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. I'm going to oppose this primarily because I don't think it's necessary to put this into the Constitution. This is something we can do in the statutes. And in addition, the Ballot Law Commission, in its current exercise of trying to find a replacement machine for the AccuVote systems, which are aging, is requiring that paper ballots be used. So we have already 2 layers of authority that are requiring paper ballots. We can do it in state law, and the Ballot Law Commission is already doing it. I see no reason to put this into the Constitution as well. So I'll be opposing it primarily for that reason.
Thank you, Representative Bergeron. Anyone else? Yes, Representative Trojan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be voting in favor of the motion on the floor. And again, it comes down to voter integrity and the belief in rebuilding the confidence for voters here in the state, that we're ensuring that we don't waver on the idea of making sure that we have the ability to audit. And if we get rid of paper ballots and there's a problem with the machine, either intentional or otherwise, it's pretty hard to go back and without a paper trail to ascertain what happened. So it's a pretty simple concept, and I think by doing a CACR, it codifies it so it's there, it stays there. Thank you.
Further discussion, the motion on the floor is CACR 19 ought to pass. Representative Groen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's very important that we put this in the Constitution. This will give us stability, a long-term stability, as Representative Sweeney has mentioned, so that as we look forward, we have a clear paper trail record of our ballots and of our elections. I think our recount procedure that we have is one of the reasons why I believe most people have confidence in our machine counting. I believe if it was anything other than being able to go back and audit by that, it would be, or recount as we're doing now, it would be difficult to do that. And as technology changes and advances, I think it's very important for us to enshrine this in the Constitution. And if there's a need to change at some point down the road because of technology, our citizens will recognize that and we'd be able to make that change. But for now, I think it's just a very important process.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add another aspect of this. And there was a time when paper ballots were not as popular, that the idea of modernization required the use of electronic ballot counting machines without paper ballots, and in other states they employed that. And I was shocked, you know, when I found out that other states did not use paper ballots in the same way. And to his credit, our former Secretary of State always defended the use of paper ballots, and then other states got on board with that as well and have changed the way they run their elections to always include paper ballots. I'm thinking of Georgia specifically. So for that reason, I think that this is appropriate to enshrine in our Constitution, and it will increase voter confidence in our elections. And it's not unnecessary. I think it is necessary. That's why I will be voting for to pass.
Representative Lane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recall during the testimony that there was some debate about whether ballot meant the actual thing like this, or whether it was these paper receipts or paper trail. And I thought somebody was going to look into that, but I guess nobody has. So it stands as written.
Apparently not. I don't actually have that in my notes. I know we had a discussion on it, but I didn't have it in my notes. Representative Barry.
To answer Representative Lane's question, that was my question that I asked, because we gave a story about my parents voting, who didn't want to vote. I made them go anyways. The sponsor's intent was that it would cover this, but to answer your question, I mean, it could be ambiguous. It was definitely the legislative intent, so maybe by saying this now, that will help that if that ever comes up, if this does become a constitutional amendment. It's most certainly the legislative intent.
Yeah, because I don't think a receipt is a ballot. It's a receipt. It's a paper trail. It's not a ballot.
Thank you for your comment. Representative Muirhead.
As a constitutional conservative, I don't think we should be amending constitutions for trifling reasons or even for reasons that prove momentary, even when they reflect a very strong passion in the moment. I don't think we should be inviting the public mind to think of constitutions as things that should be changed frequently, or in the worst case, just thrown out completely. We should think of them as really sacrosanct and venerable, and only to be amended for the most important reasons. And nothing in the testimony suggested that there's any organization or interest that's opposed to the legislation that requires paper ballots. So in the absence of really more urgent reasons for including this in the Constitution, I would be wary of doing this. So thank you.
Representative Hamblett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think at some point in the future, it may be way in the future, we will be we'll have a system of doing digital voting and that we will learn to trust that as we are now learning to trust digital currency. So I don't see a reason to put this in the Constitution. I know it could be changed at some point, but it would be a lot harder to change it out of the Constitution than just changing a law. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
I recently did some crack research on my phone. And by recently, I mean in the last 5 minutes. And the definition of ballot, according to Merriam-Webster, is a sheet of paper used to cast a secret vote. And I think that is the generally accepted definition among the public, and the reason for why we believe it's important and our accepted definition as well.
Further comments on the motion on the floor. Representative Barry.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to give Representative Hamlet a shout out for the cryptocurrency reference. That was well put.
All right, we're not talking about cryptocurrency. Representative Groen.
Just to add to what Representative Prudhomme O'Brien said, the wording in the bill is, for purposes of facilitating the examination and recounting of votes cast, all elections shall be conducted using paper ballots. So adding to the definition of ballots that she picked up, it says they shall be conducted using paper ballots. I do think that's very clear, and again, I just wanted to add this so that the intent is very clear.
Further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is OTP CACR 19. Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes, yes, yes.
Do I do that 3 times?
Yeah,
One
vote,
person, one vote. That's something.
it.
Yes.
That's it. It doesn't count.
Representative Hayward. Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Groen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm.
So anticlimactic.
Representative Ward. Representative Bergeron. Representative Murray. Representative Hamer.
No.
Representative Lane. Representative Freitas.
No.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Representative Muirhead.
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So it's 11 to 9.
I'm going to put out the call on AV over this right again. We are having issues with the microphones in this room. It has now spread from the 3 seats in the center and is now creeping up the back row. If somebody from IT can please tend to the microphone issue. Oh, oh no, you put it on and off. That wasn't a flicker. In room 306, 308, that would be appreciated because I don't think the mic is picking you all up when it's flicking. So, all right. So, all right, moving on. That was CACR 19. We are moving on to HB 1009, 1009. This is requiring the date a person registers to vote to be included with other voter information. Do I have a motion? Representative Sweeney.
Madam Chair, thank you. I move ought to pass on HB 1009.
Is there a second?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'll second that.
Representative Sweeney, would you like to speak to the motion and your bill?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is a very simple piece of legislation, and I am aware that there are registered voters that we do not currently have this data for, but for those that we do have the date of registration for, or the date that the Secretary of State received their voter registration paperwork, they would be able to put that onto the checklist that they do manage and then sell to the political organizations registered in the state of New Hampshire as just another data point on the checklist. So I would encourage everyone to vote ought to pass. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Bergeron.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to oppose the motion of ought to pass. How to track the information concerns me for one thing. When a person moves, let's say, from Nashua Ward 2 to Nashua Ward 5, they're considered a new voter in Ward 5. They may have actually lived in Nashua for 30 years, but this creates a situation where it will look like they had just registered to vote maybe 2 weeks ago. The idea that this is also going to be included on the checklist causes me some concerns. There's really no reason for that. If a person is coming in to obtain a checklist, what's important is their identity and their current residency, their domicile address, not when they registered to vote. This is just unnecessary personal information being collected and displayed on checklists that I think intrudes upon people's right to privacy and really serves no purpose whatsoever as to a person's right to get a ballot or not on election day. So I'll be opposing the motion.
Thank you. Further discussion? The bill is HB 1009. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward.
Yes.
Representative Alexander?
Yes.
Representative Terosian?
Yes.
Representative Berry?
Yes.
Representative Groen?
Yes.
Representative Quayle?
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm?
No.
Representative Ward?
No.
Representative Bergeron?
No.
Representative Murray? No. Representative Hamer?
No.
Representative Lane? No. Representative Freitas?
No.
Representative Hamblett? No. Representative Muirhead?
No.
3 noes? Oh, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay, 11 to 9.
HB 1009 will be reported 11 to 9. Again, minority reports due to me by the close of business Monday. The next bill we have scheduled to be heard this morning is HB 1010. This had a public hearing on January 19th, and you should have an amendment in front of you. It should have also been emailed to you. 2022-113H. Is there a motion in regards to the amendment? Representative Sweeney.
Madam Chair, thank you. I move we amend House Bill 1010 FN with Amendment 2022-0113H. And I'd be willing to speak to my motion.
Is there a second? I second the motion, Madam Chair. Representative Terosian seconds it. Representative Sweeney, you're recognized to speak to your
Yes.
motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee. And apologies that I was not here on the January 19th public hearing on this bill. This bill was the product of conversations I had with the Secretary of State's office to just also include in the statewide voter history that is available to political organizations the municipal voter history as well as the state election voter history that is collected. They currently do collect the municipal history that is available at the Secretary of State's office, but it is not under statute available to be included in the voter history that is sent along with the voter checklist when that is given to organizations. So it's not going to create more work on any departments. They already have this data. Statute just does not allow this data to be included in the statewide voter history file. And the bill as originally submitted did not have the right section amended in law to allow what we had talked about. So the amendment actually corrects the right section of law for the intended purpose of the original bill. So thank you.
Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the amendment as proposed by Representative Sweeney, and then we'll support the bill as amended. I think this just happens to be an odd little situation of language where I think the intent was always there that municipal voter history would be included in reports that could be provided upon those to those who are eligible to receive that information. And this, I think, just straightens out the language to make it clear what the intent of the original legislation was. So I'll support this.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is to move Amendment 2022-113? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald?
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien? Yes. Representative Sweeney?
Yes.
Representative Hayward? Yes. Representative Mooney? Oh, God, sorry. Representative Alexander, old paper. Yeah. Representative Terosian?
Yes.
Representative Berry?
Yes.
Representative Groen?
Yes.
Representative Quayle?
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm?
Yes.
Representative Ward? Representative Bergeron?
Yes.
Representative Murray? Yes. Representative Hamer?
Yes.
Representative Lane?
Yes.
Representative Freitas?
Yes.
Representative Hamblett?
Yes.
Representative Muirhead?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20 to 0.
The amendment carries 20 to 0. HB 1010 is now amended. Is there a motion? Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1010.
Representative Terosian. Is there any further discussion on the motion which is on the floor? OTPA 1010.
Representative Bergeron, are you just on, or did you want to speak? Thank you. Representative Terosian, did you want to speak?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just finally got the mic back, so I figured I'd leave it on in case I need it.
All right, just be very quiet. Representative McDonald, you all set? Okay.
Yes.
All right, seeing no discussion, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is HB 1010 ought to pass as amended, Amendment 2022-113.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Groen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm.
Yes.
Representative Ward. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Hamer.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett.
Yes.
Representative Muirhead.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20 to 0.
All right, without objection, I'm going to put that one on the consent calendar. Not seeing any. All right, so that will go on the consent calendar. The next bill we have us before us is 1442. This is in regards to the setting a new requirement for the printing of multiple languages in regards to election material. We had presented by the sponsor an amendment on it, and I have had a request to possibly do study on this particular bill, given we're going to have a discussion on whether we have a study on this. So Representative Muirhead, could you explain a little bit about what path you see forward for 1442?
Thank you, Madam Chair. During the testimony, a variety of specific questions were raised about the bill having to do with number of languages spoken in different places, the incidents in which they're spoken, the kinds of regulations that the Voting Rights Act places on states and federal legislation, and I think more questions were raised than answered, and it might help this committee deliberate on the bill to be able to commit this to further study and consider some of those questions at greater length.
Anybody want to speak on this? Representative Bergeron?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I support Representative Muirhead's suggestion. The Help America Vote Act contains provisions on when voting materials need to be provided in second or third languages, and there's thresholds that have to be met. For example, 5% if of the voting age citizens are limited English proficient, or if their education levels are at 5th grade levels. If we were to do something like this, and certainly the bill as it's currently written probably isn't clear enough, I think it would be important for us to understand how New Hampshire may eventually have to incorporate some of these federal requirements on language proficiency in terms of voting activity. I think we could learn a lot from an interim study exercise, and I don't think we would produce legislation, but I think it would prepare us for action on something like this, perhaps in the next session.
Further discussion? I have to tell you, as chair, the situation I created for us as a committee with the number of retained bills last year was something I would not knowingly do again. And so I guess what I would have been looking for was some specifics raised in regards to the bill itself rather than the requirement. I'm not sure that I'm really hearing anything other than this is a pretty interesting and complex area of the law, and maybe we should look at it some more, but I'm not hearing what different outcome people might want, which is why we have amendments, and I am always happy to entertain amendments. So could we get staff to help us study an issue. If we hold on to bills, but I'm not sure where we're trying to end up on this. If anybody have any clarification for that, Representative Muirhead?
I appreciate your, your reflections on retaining bills, and as a beginner, I have a lot to learn, but I thought there might be some, maybe more than some utility to retaining this. Nonetheless, I defer to your expertise, Madam Chair.
It has nothing to do with expertise. It has to do with calendars and votings and where we're going to end up. We did have an amendment in regards to this that was presented and spoken to, and I guess what I would like to do is to get that on the floor. Is there anybody who wants to move 2022-160? Representative Barry.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I will move as a courtesy to the sponsor that we adopt Amendment 2022-016H.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I will second that.
Okay, we have seconds all over the place. It's on the floor. Does anybody want to speak to this amendment? Anybody want to speak and recap what the sponsor presented in regards to the amendment? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the issues that we had when the sponsor initially presented the bill was it wasn't really clear how many languages voter materials would need to be made available, and I think it was pointed out that some of our cities have as many as 52 to 54 languages spoken in their school systems. In addition, there wasn't a clear threshold of what percentage of people would be primarily, their prime language was some language other than English. So the sponsor tried to address that by saying the threshold was 3%, and then he included language that says up to 3 languages, as opposed to concerns some of us might have had for how many languages are actually spoken in our communities.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the chair to, the clerk to call the roll for the amendment, which is 160.
Representative McDonald.
No.
Representative Bruton O'Brien. Yes. Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Groen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm.
Yes.
Representative Ward. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Hamer.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett.
Yes.
Representative Muirhead.
Yes.
So it's 19 to 1.
Madam Chairman,
Representative McDonald.
I'd like to switch my vote to yes.
I didn't hear the clerk announce the total, so that's fine. What's the new total with Representative
Okay,
McDonald changing his vote?
20 to nothing.
Okay.
That's why we have a way out.
HB 1442 is before the committee on the amendment, so I think maybe we can incorporate comments on the amendment and Representative Muirhead's comments. Is there anybody who wants to speak to what's on the floor at the present time?
Madam Chair.
Representative Bergeron.
I'm sorry, was a motion made to act on this bill as amended yet?
No.
Would it be appropriate for me to move that this bill should be ought to pass as amended?
Sure, I'll take that motion.
Okay, I will so move and like to speak on the motion if I might.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I slipped up by letting that happen. You guys need to be a little bit more on the ball here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Representative Bergeron to speak to your motion.
While the bill as amended perhaps lacks the kind of precision and the types of measurements that should be used in determining which languages a community might choose to make voter information available in. It is a step in the right direction, and therefore I would support the bill as amended.
Yeah. Representative Sweeney.
Madam Chair, thank you. While I agree that we have amended the bill, and I supported, as the roll call says, that move to amend, I will be voting against this motion. I just do not feel that this legislation is ready for prime time, and I believe and agree with others that have stated the calendar constraints of the cycle really do not pertain us to do too much else with this legislation, but I will not be supporting ought to pass as amended. Thank you.
I'll just say, for experience, for Representative Muirhead, what the leadership has done in this particular calendar cycle is once again decide it would be very nice to get everything done in May and not be in session in June, which sounds wonderful when you're setting the calendar in the first week in January. But when you get to April, it's a really horrible idea. So I'll just say that from experience. Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am concerned about the needs of people who are not fluent in English, but when I asked the sponsor about this bill, he was not able to tell me the amount of people in his community of Nashua who were, the percentage of people that were not able to speak fluently in English. So I'm not sure how much of a problem there is. And for that reason, I will be voting against the ought to pass as amended.
Representative Barry?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I'll be, since we're announcing our votes, I'll be voting against the motion of ought to pass as amended. I believe the idea of an interim study was thrown about, but it doesn't seem like that's the path we'll be going forward. So I would ask the committee to vote against the ought to pass as amended motion so that another motion can be brought forward.
Any further discussion on the motion, which is ought to pass as amended? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
No.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
No.
Representative Sweeney.
No.
Representative Hayward.
No.
Representative Alexander. No. Representative Terosian.
No.
Representative Barry.
No.
Representative Groen.
No.
Representative Quayle.
No.
Clerk is no. Representative Wilhelm.
Yes.
Representative Ward.
Yes.
Representative Bergeron. Yes. Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Hamer.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett.
Yes.
Representative Muirhead.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
No.
Okay.
The motion
11 to 9.
fails 9 to 11. Is there anyone, the motion is on, the bill is on the floor as amended. Is there a further motion? Representative Barry?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I would like to move that HB 1442 FN as amended be inexpedient to legislate.
Is there a second?
Yes, Madam Chair, I will second that.
Representative Hayward seconds it. Is there further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is to an ITL on HB 1442 as amended? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call a roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward. Yes. Representative Alexander. Yes. Full form. Alexander Terosian. Yeah, okay. Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Groen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm. Representative Ward. Representative Bergeron.
No.
Representative Murray. Representative Hamer.
No.
Representative Lane.
No. Excuse me, no.
Representative Freitas.
No.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Representative Muirhead.
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay, so 11 to 9.
1442 will be reported as ITL, and I'm going to look for a minority report, and I'm assuming that's the amendment that would go in the calendar, but you can talk about that. The last bill we have scheduled for executive session this morning is HB 1157. This is relative to electronic ballot counting devices, and this bill would prohibit electronic ballot counting devices from being connected to the internet. Do I have a motion? Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion to auto pass for House Bill 1157.
Is there a second?
I second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. HB 1157 is on the floor with the motion of ought to pass. Would you like to speak to your motion, Representative Terosian?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. So, as I think we all know in here, we've heard testimony. I've gotten numerous emails about the concern for voter integrity in the state. It's also no secret that many towns are looking at replacing their current vote counting machines as they get to the end of their life. So with that in mind, with the idea that connecting these machines to the internet could lend itself to problems of being hacked, either intentionally or otherwise, this is a common sense bill to ensure that we never connect them, because I can't think any good reason to connect these and give anybody temptation to try to see if they can get in and tamper with them. So with that being said, in the name of increasing confidence in voter integrity in the state of New Hampshire, I hope you join me to vote in support of this bill. Thank you.
Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be supporting the bill as well. I was not present for the public hearing, so I reached out to Secretary Scanlon with a couple of questions that I had. One dealt specifically with the accessible voting system. I was wondering if that used any kind of Wi-Fi or internet technology. He advised me that it's hardwired and does not have wireless capability. I also asked him if any of the machines being looked at currently to replace the AccuVote machine had wireless capability, and he said no, the Ballot Law Commission has established that the devices should not have wireless capability. So I was satisfied with my questions, and I agree with the previous speaker that there's really, it doesn't hurt to put it into the statute and say that it shall not have wireless capability.
Further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is OTP HB 1157. Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Hayward.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Groen.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Wilhelm.
Yes.
Representative Ward. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Hamer.
Yes.
Representative Lane. Yes. Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett.
Yes.
Representative Muirhead.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0.
The vote is 20-0. It will go on the consent calendar with no objection. That concludes our executive session business today. We've had a couple of bills continue to a further date. Again, we will be meeting again next Thursday for both public hearings and executive session. Reports on the bills today are due to me by close of business on Monday, and expect them to be in the calendar for our session the following week, which will be at a minimum on the 17th, possibly on the afternoon of the 16th. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a pleasant rest of your day, and enjoy the warmer weather while it lasts.